All right, so just to have a small overview of what we talked last time. We talked really about the basics, the console log, the variables, the types, and we briefly at the end mentioned the operators, which I think was something vital for your homework actually. You had a lot of ifs and things like that, so that was good that we mentioned it, and it was good that you guys were able to do some of them. And I need to see what was the first exercise of the homework.
But some of them without ifs, that makes sense.
Yes, exactly. But that's also why I saw like, okay, we need to touch this on this class or else you cannot do any homework. So yeah, the first one was about the calculating future age, so AGFI. Now, I saw in some of your homework that you had everything in one JavaScript file, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I did one per file, like each exercise per file. So on my index, I have all the files being loaded here. So and I had like a console log every time something we were taking care of a problem of an issue. Let's just try to open here, and here. Okay. So now, actually, we get all of them there, right? Can we zoom in this? Yes. So the first one was, I guess, a little bit simple. I don't know if you guys had much questions about it. Again, the choosing of the variables can be something. And this time I'll try not to get very far from the computer, so my voice is there. The choosing of the variables, of course, is up to you, but I also try to choose each differently, so that, for instance, when was my birthday, that cannot change, right? So it is a constant, right? But when are you trying to calculate, that maybe can change, so maybe it should not be a constant, it could be a variable in like let, and also the calculation maybe should not be. One thing that we did not mention, but you guys did it, so that was good, is how to actually print in the console log a full string with the values. We did not touch that last time, but someone actually did, and it's exactly like this. So the age will have a number, right? And in this case, we put the plus, then whatever variable or constant, then plus, and then more text. And then at the end, we never need any other plus unless we want more text on. And yeah, as you probably understood, this works both for numbers, for strings, for arrays, for whatever you want to print together with it. This basically, the term is called concatenation. So you are concatenating this string with that string, in this case number, with that string. And you can actually assign this to a variable if you want. So you can have a let result equals, and then this string plus, and then console log result. So that's a possibility as well. And yeah, and the first exercise, I think it was a bit easy to get around. And yeah, that was basically it. And we can see the result of this one is, yeah, it's this. So this part is age and this part is year future. So, and it appears as a string. Yeah, the second exercise was, let's say the same, but in these terms with the dog age. And to be honest, I don't know how the calculation of dog age is, so I just put a random number on it. And this is like, it's not about knowing the exact solution. Again, it's just to figure out that can we either multiply or sum up, or like it was just about operations.
You know that it should be an array, because different between dogs, small, medium, and big dogs.
Yeah.
And you should make array for each one, and then you choose.
the truth is that for this type of questions, this type of exercises, you can do a huge solution. You can also do a small one. In this case, it's actually to do a simple solution, basically. It's actually just the answers of this exercise is actually to get two things. One is the operations, for instance, the plus, the multiplication, division, and the other one is the conditions, the if, else. That was one of the main concerns of this exercise. So yeah, the exercise, the first part is very, very similar. Of course, you should change the variables and the constant names. I would, and that's something that I like to do. Some developers don't do it, but I would advise you to do, because I really like, is to use the names of the variables to be understandable. So when you look at the variable and you see dog years of birth, it kind of makes sense of what it is. Because if it would be an X or A or B, people would be like, yeah, I don't get it. I don't know what that means. And sometimes you see a lot of exercises or code out there where people just use small letters, and when the code starts to get big, then people have zero idea what X means anymore. So yeah, but again, on your homeworks, I saw that you guys were using the full string, and it is okay to even make a sentence with it. Again, some developers don't like that because it makes the code very big, but makes it understandable as well. So yeah, in this exercise was exactly the same. So you have the years in the future, the year when it was born. It's a subtraction to know what year, how old the person, or in this case dog, is. And then we just have a boolean that can either be true or false, so that we can make a condition to check, should we show the results in dog years or should we not? And yeah, in here, and then I just put that dog years is 3 times more than humans. I don't know if it is, but again, that's not the essence of this. Of course, if you do this exercise for a real company, then you should, actually in this case, you should ask the client, tell me what's the number you actually want, what should I multiply for, because again, we are not scientists of all domains, we are developers, we make tools, we don't need to know the science behind it. But yeah, it's just a multiplication of whatever the result is of the age and multiplying by
about this variable should show result. Should I give it true? I leave it empty. I just give division that's a variable, and then say if it's true, like if it's taking double, so it's mean.
Yeah, but the thing is that in this type of exercises, we don't have the input from anyone. So it is completely fine, for instance, to give something where, I mean, in this case, it will always print this, right? Because this one is true. So if this is true, it does not print that one. And it's completely fine on this exercise to only give half of the solution, but by changing this to false, then this one prints. So we don't need to ask the user to input something, then to change the result for him. This is just to have the understanding of, like, we know that if we change that to false, it prints the other one. Then of course we can actually print both. In this case, if we would do this, it would actually print both. Because this one is true, right? So it prints whatever this brings in, and then this always prints, no matter what. Even if this one is false, this one will still go there. But yeah, I mean, again, in this case, and that was probably not the case on that first part of the exercise, that free code camp. In this case, it's not really about have the exact perfect solution. It's actually about trying out, like, I mean, this works, and now by changing this to false, it prints out something else. Yeah, and again, in here we are using the concatenation, and this, again, this is not concatenation, but the result of this creates a number, and that number gets concatenated. And yeah, and actually if you would have a plus here, it would not concatenate the string, it would make the operation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you need to use the plus, you should do it in parentheses.
In this case, I don't think it's actually needed. We can actually just have a look.
No, I know it's not needed because you multiply. But it's plus.
Yeah, but we can just see what happens actually. Where is it? 23. But if we remove this, yeah, it actually concatenates the string. Now it's 203. So yeah, in this case, it works with the multiplication, but if you make the plus, it makes, because the result of this one is 20, right? Yeah. So it actually considers all of it a string. So in this case, it would be wrong if, if we would give this. So yeah, it would be, I mean, it's the mathematics approach to it. If it's a multiplication, as priority to be first.
Yeah.
If it's not, then we have to have parentheses and parentheses, and yeah, and then you start resolving from the middle. So yeah, that's a very good point. But yeah, again, this result, and now by looking at it, I could have done it actually here.
Yeah.
And like this, I would, like now, actually, if I would have a plus here, it would be 23.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually doing this outside of a string, like there is no strings here anymore. So this has to give me a number. Of course, that if we now do this, now this is gonna give us a headache, probably. No. What about the space? No, actually no. Oh yeah, because it's in order, right? So yeah, this one still does it because there is no more strings around. It's tricky. But yeah, in this case, this would be the best approach of not having the result being calculated in a console log, so that if something bad happens, it should happen before that. Yeah, and that was the dog calculator.
Well,
Yes.
with the dog calculator, we were requested to have only two outputs. One is it should be 70 dog years, and the other one is it should be 10 in 1 year. So what they have done is,
Oh yeah. In that case,
Yeah.
you could just do this as well, of having the calculation.
yeah,
Or why is there a red thing there? Yeah. Or you can actually not even have the if. We to be honest, here we don't need that. If we want to print both results of dog years and not and human years, we can actually do something like this. And we actually don't need any of this. So this will give us both results, right?
oh no. What I mean is it's not about the output should be only two. We have two possibilities.
Mhm.
One is set it should, if it's true,
Mm-hmm.
it should be 70 dog years, and if it's false, it should be 10
Oh.
human years.
Yeah.
That was the homework.
Yeah, but the output, like the real number of the output, the 70 or 10,
Yeah.
I don't think we should take that as that's the number we need to achieve on. I mean, we can do that by calculating the real number.
Yeah.
But again, and I mean, by having, we know in here exactly what year it's going to be, so then we can calculate that. We just need to give a proper born year so that it gives 70 in one and 10 in the other. But again, the exercise itself, and I mean, honestly, when I was looking at them, I was a bit also concerned of the understanding of it. the number results and all that, I would ask you not to pay too much attention to it, and more about the logic of how, like, you want me to display in dog years and you want me to display in human years, but the real result, to be honest, as long as you have some multiplication or division or whatever, that changes the result. That's basically what, at least what I would be interested in seeing is the not the result itself, not the concrete operation, but knowing how to use an operation. Because again, in a real, let's say, world out there, when somebody would ask you, let's say, make a function that does something, we need to do something like this, all those numbers, all those variables, usually they are given to you. And you should not worry with the exact result that has to come out, because the result should be able to calculate whatever input. In the real world, the result should be able to, we should ask this for the client, saying, yeah, you need to give me when it was born and what's the year. And then the function calculates. We don't care if it gives 70 or not. And but I also understand that concern, because the way that it's written, again, the output, we only have these two options, so it is a bit constrained. And it's the same on the next exercise, actually, on the house price calculation. That one is even more tricky, because, yeah, exactly because of the numbers that are given to us. I would not look at these numbers as the holy truth. These numbers is just a guidance to, yeah, it's something to get around with it. Because again, in here, what we will be really trying to focus on is the conditions and the operations. And of course, the usage of booleans and numbers and strings. And that's the main essence of all these exercises. Yeah, the house price. Now, yeah, the house price was there was a formula, of course. But yeah, this one might be a little bit more complicated, again, because of all the variables that we have to create, all the stuff we have to go around. Let me open it here. I don't know why this does not show the full length. Yeah, now in here, for instance, I did not look at the value that they are actually giving to it. I'm only actually calculating the price for them. If it's too expensive or not, I'm not really checking that. I saw that most of you actually were making if the price is bigger than something, then it's expensive. If not, it's cheap. And again, that's completely fine. There is a very good solution, but I choose not to do that. I choose just to make a formula to actually calculate the price of the houses. And yeah, again, in here, even for me, it was a little bit tricky to give the names to the variables. As you can see, that they are quite big. But it was because also, like, again, in here, we cannot ask the user for input, as you were mentioning, to be good just to have a function, and then you can just set the inputs and it would calculate for itself. But again, this exercise is really for you to write the variables, constants, console logs, multiplications, divisions, whatever it's needed. So yeah, I, of course, had all the variables set it up, calculated the volume, which is 1 times the other, and then input it on a formula that was actually given to us here. I don't know if, now I don't really remember, and from our homeworks, and I don't know if you find this a bit tricky, but for instance in here, actually we don't have any definition of this. For instance, in here we have that it's a constant, right, on this one down here, but in here it doesn't say anything. And I don't know if this was made on purpose to be a bit tricky, but you have to define if it's a variable, if it's a let, if it's a constant. And again, in this case, I put them all as let. We could argue that these ones should not because it's not that you can change the the dimensions of the house that easy. But yeah, I just decided to put all as let. Now, as some of you, for instance, did, is that you add the price. So for instance, house price for Peter. If it's bigger, then I don't really remember the number, but yeah, the Peter was the first one, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So this one, and JavaScript does not accept those things. So, not assert. So this one, it was the house is expensive, else the price is okay. What? No. Yeah. Come on. Why? Okay. So for instance, this I think from what I saw in the homework, most of you actually did this this part. And of course, then you have to repeat it for Julia, just with a different number. I think it was 1 million, right? For Julia, yeah, and that would be it. Of course, that you can still change and think. It's a lot of text to write. Can I optimize a little bit and write less text? In this case, we could wrap things in a function and then just call the function to actually calculate instead of having all this stuff here. And again, I think on the next exercise, we have to use function. I'm not sure now if I'm talking too much, but again, we haven't really touched in functions yet. So I was not expecting for you to actually make functions, but you did, apparently. So that was very good. But we will go through functions, how to use them, how to write them today. So, and that's also why I told you that the first 2 exercises you should try to do. The rest, if you can't, it's okay. So yeah, this was the house pricey, right? And then yeah, the easy name. So yeah, where was it? Easy name. So this one, I don't know if you guys find it a bit tricky or not, because of course this was given to you on the exercise, the random, and I don't know if you researched about what this is or what this is. Again, this is as we talked last class, that there is tools that people made out there that helps us, like there is libraries that helps us, but this is native from JavaScript. Like you don't have to install anything. As long as you have JavaScript running, you can use these tools. Of course, behind the tool, there is actually some code that does something. And this math.random basically gives you a random number. And it has some input parameters that you can say on what's the random number and whatever, from where to where. So it's just basically, I mean, in this case, you might wonder why we need this, but sometimes we do need random stuff, again, to create values, to create something that gives us, or else we will always be ourselves creating those values. So we could actually have used this on a house price calculator, just to see if, let's say, by having different different sizes of the house, if it would be cheaper or expensive. And yeah, and that's basically, there is a lot of math.something in JavaScript. And again, sometimes when you're writing some code, you end up doing some function that does something, and then you figure out like, oh, I could use a function from math to do that for me. But it's okay, you learn how to do it now. It's not a waste of time. I've done that a lot of times in the beginning when I started to be a developer. I wrote a lot of functions, and then somebody told me like, you could have used the function for that exists already. But again, you feel a bit dumb at the time. I felt like I just wasted an hour on this thing. But yeah, it's good because at least you learn what happens.
I didn't see this. I searched by myself about this, but I didn't read it on the down.
Okay. Yeah.
But what I don't understand is math.floor, because math randoms already create a random number.
Yeah.
By multiplied by 10, it means the range from 0 until 10.
Yeah, but it can give you a decimal number.
Yes.
So floor, what it does is that it rounds down always. So if the number is 10.5, the math.floor of 10.5 should be 10. So, and actually that we can just have it here a little bit. So for instance, if we have math.floor of 10 is 10, 10.4 is 10, 10.7 is 10. So it doesn't matter how close it is to the next one. When you use .floor, and floor means floor, it throws it to the ground. Now there is the opposite of it, which is ceiling, but it's seal only. It's the short for it. And this one, if you have 10.1, it goes all the way up to 11. So, and these again are two functions given by JavaScript on the math object function that you can use. And again, there is a lot of them you can use, and you don't have to know all of them. You will not know all of them because it's more of a waste of time than you actually do it yourself. But it's good sometimes of course, to know that. And that was also the reason why it was written here. And I don't think there was anywhere mentioning of that we are using .floor or whatever, but it was good that you question as well, like, what the hell is this? But yeah, that's basically what it does. The result of this throws it down, and yeah, that's it. It creates a random number. So in this exercise was about creating easy name, I think that was the name of it, to actually create names where, of course, we would have to have the same amount of names on both arrays, so that let's say if the random number would give 10 and one array would only have 9 objects, that would not fit. So yeah, and the names was whatever you would feel like. For me, it's very hard, honestly, to give names to things. I take way more time to give names than to actually do the code. And don't worry, that usually happens. Naming is one of the hardest things in programming. But then I decided to actually create 2 random numbers, because again, if we only have one random number, it will always be the same random number, yeah. Right? So I feel like, oh, but I don't want always to be Easy Umbrella or Awesome Systems, or so if I have 2, then I can get one from one from another. And again, I could have used this even here inside of the where I'm making the name. That would be perfectly fine, but I prefer to have things outside so that if now I need to change it, it has its own place to be changed. Yeah, and this we mentioned it last class, I think, where this is an array and this gives us a number, so this will print whatever position of that array, the index of the array. So in this case, yeah, let's see. So yeah, and now every time I refresh, there's going to be a different name, because again, it is random anyway. So yeah, and that was basically it. Every time it refreshes, gives a different, both first and second name. Again, random, and that might be a bit tricky if you ever have to work with calculations of numbers and give inputs and whatever. Random is very tricky because random is not random. right? If you say random from 1 to 10, well, there is a very big possibility that the same number will come up a lot of times, because again, it is random, but you might get 10 times in a row. Might be very hard, but when I was in school, when I learned that, I was like, okay, now I want to actually have the output of a random 1,000,000 times and then calculate how many times it repeated itself. Just to understand, because again, random is not really random. So sometimes to create random outputs, you might see like, why did I get the same result again? It's because sometimes it happens.
About the link.
Yes.
You add the space up, it will count it as a character?
Yeah.
It will count it?
Yes, it will count each character of the string, including space. Including this one. And that was, true. That, sorry, I completely missed that one. That was one of the parts of the exercise, was to actually calculate the length of the string. Again, there is other ways of calculating lengths, and once we go to the, let's turn off this. Once we go to the loops, once we learn loops, we'll actually see what happens behind this length. How does it work to calculate the length of the string? But again, you don't have to do that because there is a function that does it for you, but it will be good to understand how does that work. And yeah, again, I printed all of it in one string, in one console log. You can do in multiple ones. Like, this is not the main solution, because I saw in some of your solutions that you printed the length and then the name, and that's completely fine. It's still correct. Yeah, and I think, right, that was the homework, the 4 exercises, right? Yeah, I think so. Was there something that you thought it was really, really hard on these exercises? Or were they okay to do?
Startup names were not easy. The startup names.
Oh, yes, to give those names. I mean, again, for me, I don't know if you, like, what I do a lot of times when I need to give random names is that I just start looking around me. And that's why I have track and jacket, because I was on a train. so that, and this type of exercise, if you would have put A, B, C, that would be okay. That won't be wrong. I mean, okay, that it would be a name of A and C, but again, because if that's something that stucks you from doing the rest, a lot of times I just write whatever there and just, I don't care about this, because this is not the code part. This is more like the final touches to deliver to the client, whenever the client asks.
But it has been said it should be creative, funny, and interesting.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but that.
In the real world.
But that's also one of those things. Like, again, when you do the homework, you might not have a lot of time to do the homework, and if you spend too much time on these type of things, it would be better just to, okay, this is not. This is not the thing that at least I am trying to teach you. Is not to give the names, honestly, because that will come. That's something that it will come.
I just named good 1, good 2, good 3.
Yeah, and again, that's completely fine, because that was not the essence of the exercise. Yeah, wait. Yes. Now, if we go to the week 1, right? This is where we were. So we talked about types, we saw when it appears null or undefined within, right, arrays, strings, index of arrays, right? Actually, we did not mention this one, but the reason why the length works on a string is that the string can be considered an array. So you can actually say, let me think. Can we do this? This string, if we say, like, as you can see, it's printing out the position of the index and the value of that index of the string. Which, yeah, it is a bit tricky because it's a string, it's not an array. It should not be an array, but again, it's JavaScript, so it is a bit tricky. Yeah. But that was what. Okay, I'll close the homework tab. Yeah, that is what's showing here, and that's why the dot length exists on a string variable, because again, it behaves like an array, so you can easily use it as an array for that. One thing that it's mentioning here, the string methods. Again, like we saw the math dot something to calculate like some mathematical expression. That's basically what it means. On string, there is also functions that we can call, like the length. We know it will give us 10. But then, for instance, there is 2 lowercase, and now I'm going to explain what this is, because this one is the opposite. So when you have a string, like something written like this string, if you call 2 uppercase, it converts every single character into an uppercase, like, so it's caps lock now, so you don't have to write uppercase text if you don't want to. And then of course, if we have the opposite, right? And now let's even have, like, it made all of it 2 lowercase. Even this one was already lowercase, so yeah, that.
But can we choose the position also? With a number inside the 5.6?
No. This is just because it's a function, so we have to call it like that. But again, these are tricky ones because it changes everything to lowercase or everything to uppercase. And again, on the string, there is a lot of functions. And of course, like the math functions, you don't have to know them all, you don't have to read them all. It's just that if some exercise asks you to transform a string somehow, maybe there is a function for that. Always think that there might be a function for that. And again, Google is one of the best friends we have in the development world. So if you write exactly, if somebody tells you, make a string uppercase, if you write that on Google, make a string uppercase JavaScript, boom, there is a result for using 2 uppercase. So a lot of times is also about searching and also understanding, of course, what the problem can be or something. And that's why, like, it is honestly impossible to know all the functions that exist in a JavaScript library or any library, because there are so many that some of them you'll never use. To be honest, I know these ones. I've been working for a long time with JavaScript, I never use them. It's not something common to use, so, but again, I know them because I've seen them around and it's in the back of my head anyway. So yeah, that would be string methods, and again, there is also math methods, which is the numbers, the math dot something, because you cannot have a number dot something, that would not work. So that's why there is a function that giving in a number does something with it. Yeah, and we mentioned numbers, we mentioned arrays last class, and then I think this is where we ended, kinda, right, in the conditions, and yeah, I think that was right, I believe so. So yeah, as some of you saw, and now I will close the homework here and I will open the week 2 index. And yeah, and and then down here. And again, I will give you this a link to this exact result, so you don't have to write it down. Yeah, week 2. Okay. So, yeah, as actually some of you used those things on a homework, like the bigger than, lesser than, equals to. And as I think we did mention some of this, the strict equal, where let's just use the browser thingy. So this one not only compares if the value is equal, but also compares if the type of, let me just move this here. Yeah, perfect now. It also compares the type of the both variables. So this one is a number, this one is a string, so that it is false. And then of course there is and again, this is equal or equal is always to ask, is this one equal that one? But sometimes you also want to ask if it's different. And different is exclamation mark equal. Or this, and now, of course that, and I think I mentioned that last time, I would always prefer to compare equality and then handle it on an else. If it's not equal, then do something else. But sometimes you want to do things only, like you only care if it's different. So then you should use, of course, this one, the exclamation mark. But again, there is no right or wrong in there. It's just that I always have that mentality that I always try to use positive first and then negative. But that's a personal thing. It's not it's not wrong to use the different one. Yeah, then the relation operators, bigger than. I mean, there is no how to say, there is no easy way of explaining this. When I was in school, people teach me that the right arm and the left arm and whatever, because one makes like this, the other one makes like that. But I mean, how to say, the character itself, I think it explains, because whoever is on the left is bigger than whoever is on the right on this case, and this case is the other way around. So the right side is smaller than the left. The left side is smaller than the right side. So, and yeah, and this is just to compare one number to the other. But then sometimes you want to compare also including that number, right? So, for instance, let's say we have 3. Is 3 bigger than 3? No, right? Because it's the same. So, but if we have this, so this means that 3 bigger or equal than 3, then of course this one will be true. This type of operations is very useful when, for instance, you have to calculate the length of an array or something, and it gets to the point of, are we sure we are at the end of the array? And the end of the array cannot be bigger than, let's say if it's an array of 5, then index is 6, right? So then in here, I would prefer to use this one, which is a strict one that I know it will never go above the length, probably. And if it does, then I need to handle it. But yeah, this again, it depends on the cases that you have. And this is something that people do use constantly. I use it all the time, the operations. I think this is arguably one of the most used if, then, if and else type of situations, because a lot of times we are comparing something bigger than something, more than the equal ones, I think. But yeah, I don't think this is that hard to understand as well. And then of course there was the arithmetic operators. I have a very hard time with the sound. I'm sorry, but that's my problem. And yeah, again, this is basic calculation things. And as we saw today, the multiplication or division always has priority, like in mathematics. So, you know, when people on Facebook share those funny quizzes of 1 plus 3 times something, how much is the result? Like, yeah, it's those type of operations. Is basic mathematics, is plus, minus, multiplication, and division. Now, this, the ones who studied mathematics might know what it is, which is the, oh, no, not here. How to explain this one? It's the leftovers of the division. Yeah, is it? Yeah, that's how to explain it. In a lot of, I think in mathematics, it's called mod, isn't it? A number, something like that, right? Module operation, probably. No, probably not this one. I don't know. But yeah, it's the leftover of the division for one number to the other, basically. Again, this one is very useful whenever you're working in things like accountings and calculating numbers for someone else. Honestly, that's one of the jobs of a developer a lot of times, is that there is big databases with numbers and someone wants the output of the calculation, and then you need to bring your mathematics skills out there and show them how it's done. So yeah, this one is sometimes used, of course. Yeah, and then in here, yeah, this is just exercises of how to use them. Again, to use priorities, to see how it works. There is a couple of more that it was not mentioned here, but the exponentiation, right? Like 2 power 2, right? I think it's power in English, yes. But yeah, again, you don't have to know all of them. You should know the basic ones. Of course, the calculator ones is very important. One that is going to be very important in the future is the increment. So, and that's a plus plus, that or minus minus, and it has nothing to do with C++, if you ever heard about it. So, for instance, if we have 2 plus, this gives us nothing. Oh yeah, I need to assign this to something. Yeah, if I do x equals 2, now x plus plus.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm always summing it up 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1, basically. So how to explain that? Yeah, in this case, you can see that it's something very useful to go from the point 0 to the point x. And that will come very handy to actually go through an array, basically. This is the basics of going through an array, is to, I need to start in a position 0, and then plus 1, now I'm in a position 1, plus 2, I'm in a position 2. So this one is the previous value plus that. So it would be something similar to write this, let's say, this, yeah. Yeah, now it's going to give me more because I'm already summing it up before and whatever. But yeah, it would be similar to write that. Another way of using, and it's not, and of course, if you use minus minus, it goes down. That's probably a given, and it's always after the variable, never before. So, yeah. Another thing. Okay, so now x is 5, right? So now let's have a variable final count. Why not? Now, oh yeah, I need to give some number, right? Is that valid? No. Why?
You should give the numbers.
Yeah, I should give it first. or maybe that's actually not valid here. Yeah. Yeah, it's because I think we cannot start the variable like that, but then we can use it like that. So this one is basically a replacement of that, but assigning to a different variable. So we can say that the variable is plus the variable. It's the variable equals the variable plus x. Basically, that's what this one is. And sometimes you will see this often, and it's basically just giving the number to the other one and summing it up to something. Yeah, and yeah, on the arithmetic plus arithmetic operations, that's basically it. These ones, honestly, I don't think people actually use them because it only makes things a bit tricky. Yeah. Again, the things we will use the most definitely will be this, including the modulus, whatever name that is. Yes. Now, should we go a little bit through the homework? Yeah, just because I have some notes on the homework, and then we can make a small break, maybe. Yeah, let's start here. I mean, again, as I mentioned, I actually really enjoyed looking at your homework because you guys really tried most of it, so that was very good. And again, there is not really a final solution that this is how things should be done. I noticed here that he used a function to actually calculate the dog age, and that's perfectly fine. That's very good, actually, because again, we haven't gone through functions yet. We just mentioned it a little bit, but that's fine. And yeah, the one thing that is a bit in here is not dangerous, but it might be a little bit dangerous of, for instance, having an if and then if inside, and then is that sometimes you might lose a bit of, in order to figure out, let's say if there is a bug, in order to figure out where the bug is, might be very hard if there is a lot of ifs, because how to get to one, how to get to another. But it's also, again, this is a possibility, of course, for the ones who, if you are, let's say, we need to, in order to check for something, you need to check for something else first. Then that's to use an if, and then an if inside, and then you can use another one inside, and another one. Like, it can go as deep as you want, basically. But if you do that very, very deep, it can be bad in order to debug, of course. Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I think that was quite good. For instance, this is okay to use. You can define a huge amount of variables, as many as you want in a row, and you can actually assign them a value. You can say equals 0 if you want all of them to start at 0.
If you want to compare a value with one condition, it's okay to use if, then, else. But if we need to compare this value with many conditions or more one condition, you can use else if.
Yeah.
We can say if this variable equal this condition to this, else if equal the other condition to this. Consider like this, and then else. This would be the end of the last condition.
Yes, something like this. This is true. Come on, get that right. I mean, this is a very that's why it's even grayed out a little bit, because what I'm doing is a little bit of nonsense. So the VS Code is telling me you don't have to write that, but not. But let's just say let number or no, result equals 100. So now if result is bigger than 100, bigger, else if result is equal to 100, equal, and then we can have an else at the end. And this was basically what Ibrahim was actually mentioning. Smaller is that if you want to test another condition instead of all the rest, so because for instance this only cares if it's bigger, so if we would have else smaller, then we don't know if it's equal. So but we can put else if this, we can actually put else if result equals 90, it's 90, right? Or we can actually go even more and use any other, it doesn't necessarily have to be equal. For instance, in here, if we actually put bigger than 101, it will never reach there because it already reached this one, right? So it will, again, JavaScript is sequential, so it starts from the top, and if this one triggered, it's out of the if, out of all these things. It goes all the way down here, basically. Come on, why does it always show assert? Not here. So yeah, depending, of course, on what's the problem you have to solve. Sometimes you have to go like that, deep. And again, you can even go deep, not only in vertically, but also horizontally. Like you can have another if inside, and another one, and another one, and another one. But again, this becomes very hard to figure out where the problem is. Imagine if you have like 10 of these, and your number, it's with decimal numbers or whatever, it might hurt you back to figure out how to solve the problem. One note that now I remembered that I saw here on, you used these ones, you define the values after the age. So they should actually be above. So that before they are used to be minus or plus or whatever, we should always define, every time we want to define values, should always be before using them. So for instance, actually, you could have just put equal, move this part of the code up here, and this part of the code up there. And that I think that would be the only thing to change in this case here. Because yeah, or else it might not reach there before actually calculating this one. Sorry. Otherwise, in here, and again, this is completely valid because in here you define the house height up here, and then you used it to calculate probably Peter's price. And then in here, you used exactly the same variable, you just assign a different number. This is valid, this is completely valid, because again, JavaScript goes from top to down, so it doesn't care about this one anymore. I mean, we technically don't care, so we can use the same. But again, one thing to take into consideration is always that we are changing the value of this, and we need to know that. So it's just that in this case it's completely valid, and there is nothing wrong about it. It's just that we need to know that we are changing something, and it won't do anything here, but will do from now on because it has a new value. Yeah, and I think that was kind of it. I mean, in terms of notes, I think in general the homework was quite good. And again, in this type of programming, in JavaScript programming, because when you do CSS or HTML, usually there is a correct way to do, right? You need to have a div around something. You need to do the color or the pixel has to be perfect, all those things. In JavaScript, I honestly don't think there is a perfect way to solve any problem. Because if you put 10 developers in one room solving the same problem, I would hope there is 10 different solutions. Sometimes there isn't, because the problem might be simple and everybody might think the same similar way, but it's okay to try different versions. And even sometimes, again, if you have the time, I would suggest you to, I did this, can I do it differently now? But keep this one, don't delete, never delete code, basically keep as much code as you have, but like, can I do it differently? Let's try to do it differently. And because again, that's basically how programming is to do things out of the normal, let's say. So yeah, try different ways if you can, of course, if you have the time. But and yeah, I'll put the correction of the homework later today on GitHub. So my correction, again, my version of the homework. It doesn't mean that it's 100% correct. I might have committed some mistakes. I still do. So now maybe let's make a small break, and then we'll start the second part.